Hi.
Hi! Welcome to Murder in the Moonlight, episode 49. This is part 2 of the Golden State Killer. I'm Emily.
And I'm Moxie.
We're just going to throw all the content warning labels on there. We are talking true crime. What I was saying is we do have to be kind of careful with some of the verbiage because these platforms are kind of cracking down on certain word usage and they don't necessarily take into account context.
Right.
So we can swear, but some of the other stuff we might have to start using words like unalived and so forth.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Okay.
Like the R word that rhymes with ape and stuff like that. They're starting to get a lot of that going on. Do not restart now. I swear to God, if you restart, I'm going to kick your butt. Don't mind me. We're good. Just going to get this little thing's ice. Oh my gosh. So we are talking about Golden State Killer Part 2. Last week we covered...
Well, we just kind of did like a general overview last time.
Oh my gosh, where did I put my headphones? We have an echo and it's my fault. And where did I put my headphones? Okay, you know what? You go for that, hun, and I'm just gonna go and figure out where I put my headphones. And it's probably in the same location that I left my brain.
Right.
So, okay, why aren't you letting me log in? What are you doing? Why are you being a pill? You have any idea how many times I have to edit out my sniffles? I'm just like all the time.
I've had a cold lately, so you might have to edit out mine too, and I'm sorry about that.
No, it's working allergies. It's been so windy out here. Because, well, you know how Tooele gets. We get those really, really high winds that blow in and are just absolute bitches. So that's what I've been dealing with. And, like, my eyes are all burning and stuff. So it's soup's fun. And I'm
Sounds like it.
Yeah, totally cool. And I had a migraine. This is a lot of why we missed last week and stuff is I get chronic migraines for those who don't know. And I had one that your videos. That's what I got hit with a really, really, really bad one. I ended up having to go to the ER over it.
Ooh.
And yeah, it started Sunday and okay, yes, my live streams will show up here. Oh, that's because it's logged into the wrong damn account, Emily. Good God, Emily, pay attention. Anywho, yeah, so yesterday was the first day. I still had the migraine, but I was able to just kind of make it work. And then today has been the first day without the migraine. So this thing is making me like jump through a gajillion hoops to get the link for this live.
Oh,
why is that unlisted? Who the fuck told you to put it as unlisted? Public. Oh my God. I'm gonna kick this thing's ass. Okay, here we go. 1 second. Sorry, go ahead. It doesn't. Okay. What am I doing? I'm trying to get the link. There we go. You can get started. Okay. I'm just over here. I'm trying to get it up in the Patreon. Because I tried to be good about that and make sure that when we're doing these lives, I put the links in there. Because there's ones that we do that are specifically live for the Patreon, which is our my brain just died. It's okay. Inappropriate history. Oh my gosh. So yeah, if you want to see more of us just screwing around and ranting and raving, join the Patreon. You can watch the lives. Because the lives, like, I think I have like 4 hours to edit still from the last couple of ones. Oh my God, I do not know what I'm doing. Episode 49. Golden State Killer Part 2. So, I lost my train of thought, but that's okay.
Yeah, we're just, about to get started. So,
Do it, do it.
previous episode that we had, we kind of did a brief overview and didn't get too much into detail. I was going to go over the various victims, but in retrospect, there were 150 burglaries, about 45 word that starts with R and rhymes with apes, and then 12 murders. So that's a lot of victims to go over.
So very many.
So
Okay.
I'm thinking that we will kind of just go a little bit more in depth than we did with the last episode and not necessarily focus on the specific victims, but just who the Golden State Killer was and how we ended up figuring out who he was.
Okay.
In this episode.
So why don't you go ahead and get started? And I specifically remember grabbing them and bringing them downstairs with me, but I live in a tri-level, so I have 2 downstairs, and I think they made it to 1 downstairs, but not the next. Okay. And it was probably because I was running back from my mascara. I put my mascara in my purse, I don't even know, like 3 weeks ago, and every single time I've gone to do my makeup since then, I have failed to actually get it back up with my other makeup. Okay, so go ahead and get started. I will be right back, and I won't slow you down with chatting about my horrible disastrous life today.
Okay. All right. So the Golden State Killer's name is Joseph James D'Angelo Jr., and he was born November 8th, 1945. And let's see. So again, he was known by many different names: the Visalia ransacker, the East Area rapist, the original Night Stalker, which again, the Night Stalker name was also used for Richard Ramirez. So that's why he's the original Night Stalker, because he was given that name first before it was given to Richard Ramirez. And then eventually became the Golden State Killer. That name was decided on by Michelle Mcnamara. That's what she started calling him. And we're going to talk a little bit about Michelle Mcnamara as well. So Michelle Mcnamara was a true crime writer, and let's see. So she started her website, which was called True Crime Diary, back in 2006. And she would write in this a lot, mostly about the Golden State Killer and how she believed that he was multiple of these. Like, she felt that it was the same man that was doing all of these different crimes under all of these different names in California. Because again, he would move to different areas of California and start his crime spree up again in these different areas. And he would listen to the news and see what they had figured out about him and then kind of change his MO in order to avoid the police figuring out that it was him. So she kind of was putting together that this was the same man, and she was very on top of things. She was very trustworthy and was able to talk to the different investigators in the different areas of California and get a lot of information from these police officers. And so they started giving her more sensitive information and providing her with some of the documents that they had on these various serial criminals in these different areas to see if she could combine it all together and see what she could come up with as far as if this was the same person. Now, the Golden State Killer, he had left a lot of DNA evidence everywhere, but at the time that he committed the crimes, there was no DNA testing. So, at that point in time, criminals didn't know that they would eventually be tracked this way. So they had a lot of DNA evidence, but they didn't have anybody to compare the DNA to. They didn't have any suspects that ever matched up with the DNA samples that they had. And so, what do you do when you have all this DNA evidence, but you don't have anybody to compare it to? And that's a big part of where Michelle Mcnamara came into helping us solve these crimes everywhere. So she came up with the idea that, we have DNA sites now where you send in a swab of your spit and it tells you, your family lineage. And, there's the 23andMe and there's Ancestry.com. And neither of those were the ones that were used, but they're very popular right now to send in your DNA and find out what percentage of what kind of ancestry you have, which countries your ancestors come from, what percentage of you is what nationality, and there's just this very large data bank of DNA evidence.
Sorry. I
You're
just got
good.
hit in the head by my light stand.
Oh no.
It's just like not wanting to stand. Okay, there we go.
Yeah, so we're just talking about the DNA evidence and how the Golden State Killer left a lot of DNA samples, but they didn't have anybody to compare it to. And how Michelle Mcnamara comes into play here. So she was just really obsessed with true crime and figuring out who the Golden State Killer was. She was just very obsessed with his story and was doing all of this research. And like I said, she was getting different documents from the various police departments across California where she was living as well. She was living in the Los Angeles area. And she came up with the thought of, what if they went to one of these companies that collects DNA evidence and tells people who they're related to, and saw if they could find who was related to this DNA sample that was left from all of these crimes.
Yes.
And, it sounds a lot simpler than it is. It was a great idea, but they had to find the right company that would let them test the DNA evidence. First of all, they didn't have their own spit sample from these crimes. They had, semen or blood DNA evidence, but that's not what you send into these companies. So when you contact them, they're not like, oh yeah, just send in this semen sample. No, they're not going to accept that.
Gosh. That reminds me of the episode we did on Freud, or on cocaine with Freud, when he's sending her a vial, and I got totally messed up about which vial I was sending. Let me just airmail that to y'all, and you can tell me which continent they came from.
Right.
I should have done that in a German accent. I don't know why I went south.
But yeah, so, they had to find a company that would let them upload the DNA profile information. So basically, they have this DNA sample at the police department, and their specialists can take that sample and get the DNA sequence. So they had to find a company, and I don't know which company they went with. This isn't part of the information that they said, but they had to find one of the online companies that would let them enter in the DNA sequence themselves instead of providing a sample. So that was the first thing. Oh, and yes.
I'm trying to be better about not talking over you.
Oh,
we do know it was not Ancestry.com or 23andMe.
Correct.
They didn't say which one it was, but it was not either one of those. So for people who are like, don't feel comfortable about this when they're doing their DNA Just know it wasn't either one of those companies.
Which, I mean, I think that I find that kind of funny myself. Like thinking of, I have one of those like ancestry.com kits myself that my family gave me for Christmas, and I just need to set up a profile and then send in my DNA and get the
Mhm.
information. But like first of all, I've never murdered anybody, so I don't have to worry about getting caught that way. And if I'm related to somebody that murdered anybody and my DNA helps them get caught, well, I guess you
Mhm.
shouldn't have murdered anybody because I'm going to let them have my DNA.
My fingerprints have been taken so many times that I couldn't get away with shit either. And it's not
Same.
because I'm a criminal, it's because I worked in childcare. So every time I went to a
Exactly.
different one, and then when I was trying to volunteer for my kids' kindergarten, and also we had like these Boy Scouts come through one of my jobs once, and they were like learning how to fingerprint for some merit badge. I don't
Oh, cute.
know. Is there like a cop merit badge? I don't know.
Right.
Was like, go ahead and take my fingerprints. I don't care.
Mhm.
So I'm like, DNA, whatevs.
Right, exactly. My fingerprints have been done a few times as well for different jobs that I needed. Or at one point, I think I was applying to be a substitute teacher, and I needed to be fingerprinted for that, even though I didn't even end up being a substitute teacher. So that did me no good. But I've been fingerprinted many times as well.
Yeah, it's kind of funny when I went to do the fingerprints for my kids' school, their reader would not read certain fingers of mine.
Oh
And
wow.
it's not like they're burnt off or anything. It just would not read some. So I ended up not being able to like they never called me to volunteer, and I'm like, yeah, because they couldn't verify my fingerprints. I don't know.
They're like, you've been burning off your fingerprints in between kindergarten classes, and this is just unacceptable.
Look, glue guns are dangerous.
Yeah. So they had to find a company, and again, they didn't say which one it was. And again, it wasn't the two most popular ones. It was these other DNA collecting websites that are less popular. Um, but they allowed the police departments to access their DNA data banks and submit their own DNA sequence. And from that, they were able to find relatives. And like, I believe they got close enough to being like a grandparent in common or great grandparent in common with the Golden State Killer. And so from that, they had people that were creating these potential family trees from the DNA evidence, and then narrowing it down. So like they knew that it was a male because there
My
was a semen
heritage.
sample. Oh, it was My Heritage that they did this with?
Hmm.
Okay.
I was trying to figure out how close the relative was, and this popped up and said my heritage. So
Okay. That's good to know. Yeah, so they did these potential family trees and, narrowed it down by gender, by, well, no, sex. There's a difference. They narrowed it down by birth, sex, age, and where these family members had lived. And it had to be someone that lived within the right areas of California at the right time. And that gave them a few different options. I think they were able to narrow it down to about 6 people from there. And they were just investigating if it could be any of these 6 potential people. And there was one that they thought was like a really great match. They were sure they had found him, and ended up finding out that the DNA didn't match and it wasn't the same person. So they thought, oh, this didn't work. And then they saw another potential match out of those 6, and it ended up being Joseph D'Angelo. And they were able to see that, like, yeah, everything matches here. We just need to get a DNA sample from him. And that's when, they start doing like a little bit of a stakeout on Joseph D'Angelo until they're able to get him to throw away something with a saliva sample that they were able to test against the DNA and find that this was a DNA match for the Golden State Killer. And so a big part of this was the true crime writer Michelle Mcnamara pushing them towards this. But unfortunately, she passed away in 2016 of an accidental drug overdose. So she was working on writing her book about trying to find out who the Golden State Killer was, which is called I'll Be Gone in the Dark.
Highly recommend.
Yes, it is excellent.
It's
Um,
also worth mentioning that honestly, the book is what killed her.
yes, yeah,
Because
she was working
she
on
was
the book, and
mixing
she was
amphetamines and so
yes,
forth
she was pushing
because
herself to get everything written in time. I mean, the the publisher didn't have like a very strict deadline. It was her trying to meet the deadline that they had set up, and it was really more like she was really pushing herself.
yeah. Well,
It
and a
it
lot of
wasn't.
it,
Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
um, the stress of it too, because she did, and I'm sure you're going to talk about this. She found things that the police didn't find. She got people to talk that the police can get to talk. So it was really the entire weight of this was something that she took on, and it
Right.
really exacerbated mental health
Hmm.
conditions.
Yes.
And that's where it's so sad, but it's something that happens so incredibly easily.
Hmm.
So I'm just gonna throw that reminder in there. We all get those moments when we're in the groove with work and we just go.
Right.
Remember to take a second, take a breather, because it's so easy to fall into that. And this is not to say it's anybody's fault. It happens. I
Right.
forget to eat. I forget to eat all the time.
Hmm.
It's easy to happen. So, but yeah,
Yeah.
it's very very sad because she poured her heart and soul into this.
She really did. And again, they made a show on HBO based on the story of her writing the book and how she had passed away and how they were able to find the Golden State Killer based on the work that she had been doing and her uh, widower husband Patton Oswalt, who wouldn't let her work just fade away. He wanted to make sure that her book got finished, that the rest of her story got told. He didn't want her to have died pouring her heart and soul into this and have it not go anywhere. Um, but she was pushing herself very hard to reach her own deadlines that she had set, and she also was having horrible nightmares because of the information that she was finding out and because of how like just how much she was engulfed in this story and all of the updated information
Mhm.
and just
Yeah,
nasty little tidbits of information that she was finding that the police didn't know about,
yeah,
or that they had missed within the information that they had given her. She was having horrible nightmares.
yeah.
So
And
she was,
it's hard to explain what a night terror is or what a sleep paralysis episode feels like, especially sleep paralysis episodes with hallucinations.
mhm,
If you've never experienced, it's hard to explain the mental toll it takes on you.
right.
Like, I'm a grown ass woman. I've been through a lot of crap, but sometimes I still wake up crying, woken up screaming a couple of times because
Mhm,
that's sleep terrors. There's night terrors and sleep paralysis.
right.
Seriously fucks with your head.
Yeah. So she was taking amphetamines during the day to keep herself awake, to keep her focused on her work. She was also, she was a wife and mother, and we all know that's super difficult all on its own. You know, um, taking care of a household, taking care of a child, being there for all of the school stuff that they need to do, helping feed the family. On top of that, she's trying to write this book. She's poring over information from the different police records that she had been given. Um, and then on top of that, when it was time to go to sleep, she couldn't fall asleep because she was having these horrible nightmares. And so she would have to take something else to fall asleep again and then do it all again the next day. And it caught up to her. It was so much, and she ended up accidentally overdosing.
Yeah. It should be said that all of her medications were prescription.
Yes. Um so so they still hadn't figured out who it was, but they continued the work after she had passed away. And like I said, so she had been working closely with another um true crime writer. Let me get his name.
I think they just called him like the kid half of the time.
No, his name was on here.
Yeah, no, he has a name. It's just that was kind of his nickname
Oh, okay.
because he was young. If it's the same one we're thinking
Oh,
about.
Billy Jensen. So she was working a lot with Billy Jensen, who is also a true crime writer. And so when she had passed away, Patton Oswalt reached out to him, and they were discussing like finishing the book together. And so with Billy Jensen, Patton Oswalt, and then also another investigator for one of the police departments, Paul Holes, the three of them got together and worked tirelessly to finish I'll Be Gone in the Dark. And it was at the time that the book was being released that the police finally had discovered that it was Joseph D'Angelo and announced that they were making an arrest in the Golden State Killer case. So, going back to Joseph D'Angelo and kind of talking about who he was, um, so he grew up in California. He was originally born in New York, but you know, his like junior high school and high school he attended in California, and he did serve in
Grade.
the Navy during the Vietnam War. What was that?
He did hate the 6th grade.
I don't remember this part. You want to?
Oh yeah, so I posted it's really easy to find the full poem online. And I'll most likely post a copy of it in the Patreon group. Or not the poem. We read the poem last week. But it was so I originally thought it was a letter that he'd like sent to taunt the police or whatever, because he did shit like that.
Mm.
But when I was listening to an interview with the guy who does the criminology podcast, he was saying it was stuff that had like probably fallen out of a bag or something. But there's an essay in it that it called "Mad" is the word, because that's how it starts, and the entire thing is about how much he hates the 6th grade, and like all the disappointments have made him mad and turned him into like the monster that he is. He's like field trips that were promised and then canceled and stuff like that. And I'm like, I get it's disappointing, but damn, that is an extreme reaction, boy.
Right.
But yeah, so it's I'm like, he hated the 6th grade. I will always remember that about him. But I posted in our social media stuff for this morning the pictures of the letter and just kind of pulled out a couple of quotes from there.
Mm-hmm.
And then I posted a picture of the little map that he drew with it called Punishment. And they've looked at that. It is not an actual place, because they were trying to figure out if it was a map of an actual place, but it's not. And it was probably more like a compound type design that he was rolling with, is what they were saying. Or like a dream community, something like that. We all know what that means. Cult.
So after high school, he started at a community college studying, police science, and then moved on to criminal justice and did train to become a police officer and served as a police officer from 1976 to 1979. And he was in the burglary unit. And as you'll recall, we said that he committed over 150 burglaries. So he's in the burglary unit, but he is just learning how to do this himself without getting caught. So he knows what the police look for.
Yeah, what's the police equivalent of a firebug? If anybody knows what the police equivalent of a firebug is, please let us know. So you know what a firebug is, right?
That's a fireman that's an arsonist?
Yes.
My dog is currently chasing her tail in the room, if you can hear this like random.
We need the video of it. Hi, Anna!
Can you see me?
Is your tail making your life miserable, Anna?
She's just like chasing her tail aggressively on the floor and just like making all of this noise. I'm sorry. It's kind of funny though.
The dogs are the unofficial part of the program, you know. Y'all, this is what you sign up for. Oh, I was gonna say, because we've had some new people come on a couple of times, and the reason that we chose to do the format that we do for the lives, and I know that we are all over the place and we're crazy, especially last week where we'd taken a month off, and oh my gosh, we were so unorganized.
Yeah.
But the reason that we do the format that we do is because it's an open discussion.
Right.
So yes, you know, whichever one of us is presenting the information, but this is an open discussion. People, if you have anything you want to say, hop on. Unless you're being a jerk, and then you can go be a jerk somewhere else. But yeah. Right. So yeah, if you've got questions, if there are little tidbits, you know, if we horrifically mispronounced a word and you're going to put the phonetic spelling in there for us, yeah, be a part of it. And as always, if you have any cases that you want to hear about, let us know.
We'll let you know if it is one that we're not going to cover, because we do have some things that we don't like to talk about.
Like, we're never going to cover Jasmine and whatever the crap her vampire boyfriend's name was. We're never going to cover the Toy Box Killer.
We're not going to cover the Barbie and Ken.
I was just about to say that.
I don't like them. I'm sorry.
And we're very careful about cases that involve children. Like, a lot of it depends on how old the case is.
Right.
So, and I know it seems like a lot, and you're like, oh my God, what cases do you cover? Trust me, there are more
than enough. There's so many that we can cover within that.
History of ever. Trust us. Just, you know, especially the really weird off the wall ones that you've only heard like once. Earlier today, I was listening to Crime Junkie, and they were talking about this case, and they're like, it was so huge in 2011, and then it just fell off the earth. And they're like, I haven't seen other podcasts really cover this. We want those stories.
Yes.
You know, you don't just say, oh, hey, I randomly heard about this, and whatever. Any suggestions? I'm just putting out there and pimping because we are getting kind of close on time.
Right. Yeah, so eventually he was released from being a police officer, or fired from being a police officer, after he had been arrested for shoplifting a hammer and dog repellent. Now, the interesting thing about the dog repellent is that was something he was using as the burglar and the rapist, breaking into people's houses to make it so that their dog wouldn't bark at him.
Mm-hmm. And some people were asking on one of the podcasts I was listening to earlier that they didn't know what dog repellent is. I don't know if they've changed the formula, but definitely back in those days, it would still have been ammonia based.
Mm-hmm. And a lot, so like we were saying in the last episode, he would break in a few times before he would commit the actual crime. He would sneak in rope, ligatures, weapons. He would find if they had weapons and move them so that the victims would go for the weapons that they had in the house and not be able to find them, or the bullets would already be taken out of the gun and he would be teasing them.
I don't think we mentioned the bullets one last week, did we?
I'm not sure. I don't remember. In the
I
event that we
don't
didn't, there was a case where he had broken into someone's house and, you know, was threatening the couple, and the husband reached for his gun that he kept in the side of, you know, like the side table by his bed, and pulled it out. What was that?
Nightstand.
There we go. And pointed it at him, and Joseph D'Angelo held up, like, just started sprinkling the bullets from his hand. Like, he had already taken the bullets out of the gun when he had been there on a previous day and was taunting the victims who didn't know that their loaded weapon wasn't loaded anymore.
It is slasher horror movie level shit he did there.
Right.
Like not even old school. It was like some Scream level crap he rolled on that. And he did so much shit like that. I think we'd mentioned it last time too, that a lot of the stuff he did is like you'd see it in a slasher film and be like, you know, your brain it feels comfortable seeing these things in slasher films because you think to yourself, this is fictitious, this isn't something that happens in real life. And then along comes Joseph motherfucking D'Angelo.
Right. Okay, so let's see. Yeah, so it was in 2018 that they finally arrested him, in April of 2018. Again, most of these crimes were committed between 1976 and 1992, I think.
1974, I think, is when the
1974. Started. Yeah, that the murders would have started. 1974 to about 1992. And they didn't have any idea who it was to make an arrest until 2018. But they were able to get a DNA match to prove that it was Joseph D'Angelo and put out an arrest warrant for him, and he is now in prison for the rest of his life. I know we're getting close to being out of time for today, so
that's why we're doing 4 episodes.
Exactly. So in future episode, we'll talk more next week about the specific murders and those victims, and, you know, kind of how the arrest and the trial went. But I just wanted to say, like, so when I first heard about this case and heard about Michelle Mcnamara's involvement in it, I became obsessed myself with this storyline and with Michelle. And that's one of the reasons why I have studied this case so much, that I've watched the HBO thing, I've bought the book, I listen to all of the podcasts I can find about it. And I used to listen to the comedy routines of Patton Oswalt when they were dating, and he would joke about his true crime girlfriend and the creepy shows that she would watch. And just, I mean, I didn't become obsessed to the extent that she did. I'm not trying to claim that by any means, but I did become obsessed with her and her story of trying to find the Golden State Killer myself. I just became completely wrapped up in it, and I have found it so fascinating. And it's starting to inspire more police departments to do similar. It's expensive, and so they're not able to do this as much as they would like to, but they are starting to use these DNA databases to find really violent criminals that they have the DNA evidence of, but they don't have anybody to compare it to.
Yeah, there's been at least a dozen cases. And it might not seem like a lot, but you have to realize that where you're looking at, I mean, this guy is a perfect example where there were like 5 or 6 different criminals that they thought were all separate criminals that were him.
Mhm.
And suddenly you've got 150 cases that are solved because they found one person.
Right.
So saying there's like a dozen people who have been found through this, you have to think about the number of crimes that were committed. It adds up so fast.
Yes. And so it's turning into, like, it isn't really a paying job yet, though I think it could become a paying job in the future. But true crime enthusiasts that also like researching genealogy are starting to donate their time to cases like this to try and help the police find potential criminals to investigate to see if their DNA matches. And they're taking these DNA cases where it's compared to the DNA databases of these websites and then doing genealogy work to see, okay, here are some potential people that could be the criminal that committed these crimes.
So, GED Match is the free online database where anybody can share their data from consumer DNA testing companies. So, GED Match.
So right now, if you're a true crime enthusiast and a genealogy enthusiast, like, now is your time to shine. Go out there and solve some serial murders.
Yeah. I just lost access to a bunch of the genealogy website stuff because I cut some religious ties.
Mm-hmm.
And like, it's going to cost me so much money now. That's okay. I wasn't really using it anyway. I collect hobbies, and for a while genealogy was one of them. And you know what happened? You know what happened? I'll do these separately. You see that? All that crap over there? That is after 7 years of going through my grandma's genealogy. I'm going to swivel it around here for our other... I don't know if you can see it very well on that camera.
So much.
She kept everything. She was a child of the Depression era, and she was soups into genealogy. I mean, to the point where, and I'm not kidding y'all here. Moxie can testify. The last thing she did, the last day before she died, was finish the last page of the book she had been putting together, like a scrapbook she had been putting together of her life story.
Yep.
She was dedicated.
Mm-hmm.
So I had a span where I was like dedicated for a while, and now I'm like, what? I know I said I'd get these all digitized and published, but I was younger and full of dreams. So mad respect to the genealogy bugs out there.
Right, definitely. It takes a lot of time. And that's time that, these police departments definitely do not have.
Which I should say, I mean, they came out and they said it, one of the articles I said it was like the MyHeritage DNA through it. I should say MyHeritage is actually a pretty good one. I've been able to find stuff on there that I couldn't even find on like Ancestry, or the LDS Church has a pretty comprehensive genealogy program that they use that's free access to anyone. And a lot of stuff that I couldn't find there, I was able to find with MyHeritage. So I mean, it's still a great service. So, and I'm not pimping the LDS Church. I'm just saying that they have. If you want to do genealogy and you don't know where to start, go find a Mormon.
It's true.
It's so. Okay, we have like 3 more minutes.
3 minutes.
Okay, so 50th episode is next week, y'all, assuming we don't get sick and he doesn't get a cold and I don't get hit with the mother of all migraines.
And I don't just sleep through the episode.
It is one of the pitfalls of the lives. So, and we're working really hard to get all of these episodes onto the podcast, edited on the podcast format, because we do have this on Anchor and Spotify, but we only have like the first 3 episodes and they're horribly edited and I have to go back and redo. So it is one of the pitfalls of doing lives, is if we get sick. So, but 50th episode, I said it last time, I don't have the book with me this time, but it is the true crime activity book.
It looks so fun.
Yeah, we've got a copy in hand. We are giving it away for our 50th episode to just kind of celebrate. So keep an eye out for those posts. It's going to be a lot of, like, share, comment, tag somebody type stuff to get it for entries. Keep an eye out for that. It's really fun. And we are not affiliated, or they are not, the people who put out this book are not affiliated with us in any way. They are not our sponsors.
The dogs have exited the room.
There we go. Yeah, they're not involved. They're not sponsored or affiliated with this in any way.
The dogs have re-entered the room.
It's just something, I bought myself a copy of the book and I was so freaking entertained with it. I was like, we're getting this to do a giveaway with. Okay. So we will see you guys again, same time, same place next week. Until then, remember, be a bitch.
Carry a big stick.
And don't get murdered. Okay, I love you. Bye-bye. I need to stick with you for a minute.
Okay.
Stay on the other stream for a minute.
Okay.
Okay, the rest of you, I love you. Bye.